I just think that it's really missing the point that really everybody deserves to be able to eat safe food. To have food that is safe to eat should be just, it's something I'd like to assume is possible.
Hey there, fellow nerds. Welcome back to another episode of The Present Illness, the podcast where two physicians try to make sense of a world that's a little febrile and continues to be underdiagnosed with increasing challenges related to public health. I'm Arghavan, Salles, a surgeon scientist and your friendly neighborhood doom scroller in residence.
We might need to go to the ICU soon. I'm Alyssa, Burgart, an anesthesiologist and bioethicist who tracks health news and health law like their EKGs, full of spikes and surprises. The Present Illness is where we dig into public health, politics, culture, and ethics with a scalpel in one hand and a meme in the other. As a note to our listeners, we often talk about tough topics. They can be intense. And so if you need to take a break, we totally understand.
We want to send a big thank you to everyone who's listening, wherever you found us, with some extra love to our subscribers who follow us on any of our various platforms, and a special warm welcome to anyone who just stumbled in from the Tate brothers being arrested yet again.
I mean, I guess hooray that they got arrested. They deserve it. I hope they're having the day they deserve. They also had like some pretty wild outfits they were wearing when they got arrested?
Well, in particular, Andrew is wearing like this purple blouse. I mean, it really looks like a blouse. And then he's like...
It looked like something out of like a 90s JCPenney catalog.
Yeah, but also for a woman. I mean, like he's wearing these tight pants that are really like pedal pushers. And then these like gray or black loafers. People found lots of things to compare his outfit to, including like some very cheap online shopping sites that had a very similar outfit. But my favorite was that apparently Blanche on Golden Girls at one point wore a very similar outfit, and she did in fact wear it better, in case people were wondering. So yeah, that was it was bizarre. But he had just actually had another shirt that he was wearing. I didn't see the outfit, but he was at like a casino wearing this very tight see-through shirt, and people, I mean, he just has terrible fashion sense. They both do. Tristan was wearing a suit, a black three-piece suit, that was quite ill-fitting. So, Derek Guy, who's our favorite fashion critic for men's fashion, was asked, somebody had asked about like, why doesn't, these guys have so much money, why don't they have suits that fit them better? And apparently Derek had at some point spoken with the guy who tailors for Tristan. And
they actually use a tailor.
Yes. How else are you going to get that look? I mean, that doesn't come off itself. You have to try real hard for it. So anyway, they the tailor said that he's constantly, allegedly, reportedly, that he's constantly telling Tristan, like, no, the pants should be longer, they should be looser, like trying to correct things, but that Tristan insists that they be cut this way. And so, there's no helping people who don't want to be helped. But in case there are people who... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it turns out that if you are a rapist, there's no amount of fashion that will fix that.
Well, absolutely not. But, in case folks don't know who these two guys are, lucky you. But they are
so
two
happy for you.
Brothers who, Andrew's, really definitely the one who is better known for having this like massive online platform where he peddles misogyny to young boys and men. And
he's sort of like the center of the spoke of the manosphere, it feels like.
I mean, he does seem to be, I have not researched this, but in my like just experience of the world, he seems like one of the early manosphere podcaster types. And he has been, what's very interesting about him is he has spoken very clearly publicly about the way he has abused women, his philosophy on sexual abuse, which is kind of like the only way that he likes sex. I mean, he has said that sex with a woman is gay if you like it. He's got some very distorted views about women and relationships that he is unfortunately amplifying to millions and millions of people. But he and his brother have both been arrested multiple times for things like sex trafficking, human trafficking, rape. This is not the first time. Folks may have heard the story that they were held in Romania for quite some time and not allowed to travel until the U.S. government pleaded with the Romanian government to let them be able to travel while they were awaiting their court date. And that's how they came to be in the U.S., not this time, but the time before. And then, of course, because they're able to travel, they were in the U.S. This arrest happened in Miami.
I just think that it's really missing the point that, like, really everybody deserves to be able to eat safe food. Like, to have food that is safe to eat should be just, that was typically something I'd like to assume is possible.
This arrest happened in the U.S. because the U.K. had brought 38 additional charges against the brothers, in addition to 21 they had already brought against the brothers in the U.K. And so the U.K. has asked the U.S. to extradite them to the U.K. There is some question of whether, given the pro-rape administration that we currently have, whether they will actually go through with this extradition or not. But so far, at least, it seems like there's no resistance that we're aware of from our government to force these guys to face these charges in the UK. So, as others have said, these guys get arrested all the time. How come nothing ever happens? So, hopefully something will actually happen this time, because they really are not just terrible influences, but they actually are actively harming women anytime they're not in prison. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on it and see what happens. So shall we get into the rest of this episode?
Listen, people, there's a lot happening in the world, and like, we couldn't settle on what we were going to talk about. And there's like all of these stories that, like, they are callbacks to things that we've talked about in the past. We've got a couple of updates. It's going to be exciting. Go on an adventure with us.
Yeah, we did want to follow up on a lot of things that we've talked about in earlier episodes. So I want to start with the cyclosporiasis outbreak, which we talked about briefly last week in our intro. So this is the parasite that causes explosive watery diarrhea that can last for weeks, and it can start about 2 days to 2 weeks after you ingest the spores. The spores are commonly found on fresh produce like lettuce, salad kits, raspberries, green onions, basil, cilantro, etc. So what's happened in the last week is that we have continuing ballooning of cases. The latest numbers released from the CDC were over 11,000 suspected and confirmed cases. And now cases have been identified in over 40 states. Last week, there was an announcement that the belief is the product that is perhaps most responsible, or at least responsible for some of these cases, is iceberg lettuce that comes from Taylor Farms, and specifically one of their farms in Mexico. So Taylor Farms is a company that's based in Salinas, but it turns out that Taylor Farms is also almost everything. It's Earthbound Farms, if anybody's bought that before.
Oh.
It's the Target brand, Good and I forget what it's called. It's not Good and Plenty. That's a candy, I think, but Good and something. And it's the Trader Joe's brand. It is the Walmart Marketplace brand. We'll put a link to what all the things are, but Taylor Farms is I read this somewhere, it's over 50% of the greens that we get in this country. So, and you have to be it's really hard to actually figure out whether what you have in front of you is Taylor Farms or not. But if you look at the codes right near where the expiration date is, the codes will say TF as the first.
That's what that means?
Yeah. So if folks are trying to avoid Taylor Farms, that's one thing to look for, but it's actually very hard to avoid that farm specifically. But okay, so that's what happened. So the announcement was made. We think it's probably Taylor Farms iceberg lettuce. And that, by the way, that conclusion came from all the interviews that the public health folks were doing with people who had confirmed cases of cyclosporiasis related specifically to Taco Bell. People may remember that Taco Bell was actually the first. Well, I don't know about you, but that was the first place I heard about cyclosporiasis at all, was Taco Bell was going to not put lettuce on any of their products for a while because they knew that people had been getting sick from their products. So when the epidemiologists are tracing for people who have cyclosporiasis, what all they have taken in, one common thing that popped up in a lot of the cases was iceberg lettuce at Taco Bell, which had been sourced from this specific Taylor Farms farm in Mexico.
Can I take a second before we get to this thing that you're going to talk about in the weekend? I want to make a point about classism, okay? Because I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, but I don't eat at Taco Bell. This doesn't impact me. Mm-hmm. And when you think about the massive amount of market share that one supplier has,
Mm-hmm.
and you talk about all the places where this lettuce could be showing up. I just think it's important because I feel like I've heard people be like, well, but it's Taco Bell. Like, obviously Taco Bell makes people sick. Ugh. And, I just think that it's really missing the point that, like, really everybody deserves to be able to eat safe food. Like, to have food that is safe to eat should be just, that wasn't typically something I'd like to assume is possible.
Yes. And I mean, I used to have Taco Bell a lot when I was younger, never got sick from it. So I think actually it's very interesting how the government has tried to make Taco Bell out to be like the bad guy here, but they have had a stronger response than the FDA, the CDC, certainly Taylor Farms in trying to protect people. So I have not had Taco Bell in many, many years. But I was looking at their menu yesterday because I was like, maybe I should go get some Taco Bell, without lettuce. Anyway, so back to what happened over the weekend. So they had made this announcement that they thought it was the iceberg lettuce from the specific Taylor Farms farm in Mexico. And then over the weekend, the FDA had announced that they had tested a more recent sample of iceberg lettuce from that farm and that it had tested, actually, I think it was on Friday maybe, that it had tested positive. But then on, I believe it was Sunday, they said, oh, actually, it was a false positive. So that's fine. That happens. And I want to make clear that that sample was a later sample than the lettuce that would have been at Taco Bell or that would have been in the grocery stores at the time when a lot of these cases were identified. So it wasn't part of the lettuce that Taylor Farms had said at that point they were recalling anyway. It was a separate sample. And then Taylor Farms put out this statement that really was disturbing to me because it was, I feel, intentionally misleading, or it seemed like they were trying to intentionally mislead people into thinking that this false positive meant that their products were completely absolved of any suspicion, which is not the case. So here's what they said in their statement. And we're gonna fact check this in a second. I'm just gonna read it. They said, today, FDA apologized to us. Yesterday, FDA informed Taylor Fresh Foods that one of its iceberg lettuce products from central Mexico had a, quote, confirmed positive, end quote, test for cyclospora. Today, we were informed that FDA made a mistake and this was a false positive. To be clear, at this moment, FDA has not identified a single positive product test result for cyclospora. Acting on initial information provided by health officials in an abundance of caution, we completed a voluntary recall of iceberg lettuce from central Mexico. Recalled product was limited to iceberg lettuce grown and processed in central Mexico. All other Taylor Farms products, including all Taylor Farms brand products, are not involved in the recall. Our thoughts remain with everyone who has fallen ill in this outbreak. We're committed to working with public health authorities as the ongoing outbreak investigation continues. The FDA did not apologize to them. The FDA did not make a mistake. False positives happen. False positives and false negatives happen in all kinds of testing. They did not make a mistake. They don't have access to the lettuce that had shipped weeks ago that caused a lot of these cases to be able to test that lettuce. So that's why they tested this more recent sample. They haven't tested these other products. That doesn't mean that those other products are safe. A lack of evidence, as they say, is not evidence of a lack of a problem. So I felt this, people might have a different opinion, but I read this statement as them trying to absolve themselves from any responsibility, which I thought was really irresponsible. And in fact, the FDA then had to put out a statement. So whatever you think about the FDA, here's what they said. To clarify, this false positive lab sample does not change the basis for FDA's ongoing outbreak investigation or the overwhelming epidemiological data supporting the current voluntary recall by Taylor Farms. And then they go on to say that they, notified Taylor Farms of this new sample having tested positive and that it was a false positive that they also notified Taylor Farms about, and that they're going to continue to do their investigation. So if people aren't following closely, they might have just seen that Taylor Farms post and said, oh, okay, everything's fine. I can go back to eating, raw, uncooked lettuce, whatever kind of lettuce or other leafy greens. Anyway, so that's kind of where we are now, with the outbreak continuing, as I said at the start, to grow. And RFK Jr. said that it's, all under control. Everything's fine. I mean, sure, if you think people getting sick left and right is fine. So as for me, as I said last time, I'm continuing, unfortunately, to avoid uncooked leafy greens at this moment. because it's the easiest thing, I think, rather than, trying to figure out if it's Taylor Farms or not, when Taylor Farms seems to be like any and every green that exists out there. And also, I think I, I don't know that if it's just the iceberg lettuce, that means necessarily that their other greens are not going to be affected. I think that's kind of um, I don't know that that's logical thinking necessarily. So I don't know. I feel like we need more information. And that's where I sit on all that. Oh, I should mention also so Taylor Farms has donated to multiple PACs that support Trump. The CEO is a guy who is a Republican who has also personally supported multiple Republican products. Just sharing that in case that affects anyone's interest in supporting Taylor Farms as a brand. And also, a lot of people have pointed, especially to their contributions to these PACs last year, as kind of suggestion that perhaps Taylor Farms was paying to aid in deregulation, which we know has happened across the board since this president was inaugurated. And that deregulation in the case of food has really caused a lot of problems for us here in the US as we try to have access to healthy foods that are not contaminated by various infectious diseases.
Yeah. I saw a piece that our friends over at Pandemic Accountability Index wrote that I can link to in the show notes about calm mongering around these sort of illnesses. And so, just as Jay Bhattacharya oftentimes had a history of making everything sound like no big deal around COVID. Emily Oster is another health economist who does sort of similar things and has been making the rounds, selling that this cyclosporiasis is really not that big of a deal. Don't worry too much about it. And, to me, I want a 0% chance of having to experience weeks of explosive watery diarrhea. Like for me, that's a boundary, that I would like to maintain. I'm into not doing that at all. And so, last week, while we were recording the show, I canceled the delivery service that I usually use that delivers salads. And I eat a lot of salad. Love a leafy green myself. And my son, when he was very little, when we were making pizza, he was like, would you like a salad pizza? Because he knows that I like salad. So when we made pizza, he wanted it to be salad pizza. Yeah, so I'm bummed because I feel like half of my diet is now really impacted, but I would much rather not eat lettuce than poop uncontrollably. I don't want to do that. I'm not into it. And the other thing that this makes me think of is, raw milk. And we've talked a little bit about various raw milk issues and the MAHA movement and the amplification of raw milk by RFK Jr., similar to how you're, again, the calm mongering that everything's just fine. And I'll just call to people's attention. ProPublica has done a bunch of really great reporting on raw milk outbreaks and the serious illnesses that they've caused. And there's a farm from this guy named Mark McAfee, who has been responsible. Their farm's been responsible for many of the serious illnesses that have developed. More than 40 people have been hospitalized. Hundreds of people have gotten sick. And, there's only a relatively small portion of the population who is like into raw milk. But for people who have, kids in particular are especially susceptible to getting seriously ill because of the amount of milk they eat and the way that they're able to process things. And so the quotes, though, the piece that came out today was 5 quotes on raw milk from Mark McAfee. And this one just blew my mind. This is a quote from McAfee. I've put a couple kids in the hospital and they've been sick, but they recovered. And here's the thing. I'm a pioneer and I'm going against the grain here. I'm climbing a mountain they say you can't climb. And I think it just really highlights the intersection of anti-regulation and food safety. And the fact that there are people like Mark McAfee are just one example of folks who have really glommed on to this administration and their anti-regulation stance to really push behavior and food that is just incredibly harmful, and it's not safe. And there's no reason, there are no health benefits to raw milk.
Yeah.
And yet he has gone out there and he has seen as a way to, frankly, to counteract the FDA's behavior during the previous administration. Oh, I'm just going to educate the public about raw milk. So, big campaigns pushing raw milk so that people would feel that it was safe, even though it remains an unsafe thing to do.
And the idea that like I'm pushing frontiers, pushing boundaries.
And so it's okay, people died? I mean,
yeah. I mean, that's never been a good thing, right? Like, this is exactly the type of stuff the guy who owned that Titanic submersible, that's the type of stuff he said for years. Like, no one is using this material. They say it's not safe, but I'm going to prove that it's safe, right up until his own death because it was, in fact, not safe. But he took several people with him. Yes. Yeah, implosion, I think, instead of explosion. But, a tragic, tragic outcome that could have been fully avoided because this guy made repeated statements about what his intentions were. There were many engineers who told him this was not safe, that he should not be doing this, but he thought he knew better. And that's exactly what that quote from this guy that you just read reminds me of, is people who think they know better. And it's the same as what's happening in our administration on so many levels, right? RFK Jr. thinks he knows better than the scientists. And look at what's happening even with coal and fossil fuels and these wind farms. Our government has spent $2 billion with a B dollars to stop wind farms that were already in the process of being built because they think they know better than all the scientists who are telling us we are in 5-alarm fire territory here in terms of the pace at which things are changing for our climate. Anyway, so everyone who talks like that, I think, should have all of their funding taken away. Like, they are a danger to themselves and the people around them.
Yeah, I'm pro food regulation. Big fan.
Yeah, I'm pro us having safe food to eat. Regardless, as you said, of our budgets. Like, everyone should have access to safe food, and it is our government's responsibility to provide that, to ensure that we have that access.
I agree.
Okay, shall we go on to the Todd Blanche hearings?
Yeah, who, by the way, is the least fun Golden Girl.
Oh, Todd Blanche.
When you said Blanche earlier in the episode, I was like, oh, I wish we were talking about that Blanche.
She's an icon for sure. So last week, there were confirmation hearings for Todd Blanche, who has been the interim AG ever since Pam Bondi was fired, as folks may recall. And so now they're going through the process to potentially appoint him as the permanent AG. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and perhaps the most important piece of background is that he has been President Trump's criminal defense attorney.
That's right. Prior to joining this administration, he was Trump's personal lawyer, as are multiple other lawyers he has brought into the Department of Justice. Now, as they're having these hearings, some of the things that were brought up, well, I want to draw attention to one major thing that was brought up, which is that there was questioning of Todd Blanche around his handling of the Epstein files. Now, even when Pam Bondi was the AG, she has said that he was the one in charge of the Epstein files and the release of the Epstein files. Folks may recall he had gone to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell for like 9 hours. And he has never met, or at least up until these hearings, had never met with any of the survivors. And folks
That's so embarrassing. That's gross.
It's deeply offensive, and hurtful. And the survivors have now for months been talking about their efforts to try to get in touch with the Department of Justice and the fact that no one will respond to them. No one will meet with them. And so this came up in these hearings, and Tom Tillis basically made it clear that he wanted Todd Blanche to meet with the survivors. And so apparently he did, but the survivors afterward, multiple of them were like, what the fuck was that? Like, we didn't need this kind of meeting. We needed to meet with someone who actually cares about what has happened to us. And they asked him if he had read the files, and he said he had not. Like, does that mean...
What is the point of even...
read more of the files than this guy has?
You probably have.
I mean, that's terrible.
I mean, that's what it sounds like. Is that real?
Atrocious. And this is the guy who's supposed to be bringing justice. But, when they asked him, like, who he is, right? He said, I'm President Trump's lawyer. And then he had to catch himself and restate that he's not.
Okay. And I also want to say, like, the guy that asked that question, John Kennedy, I don't remember what state he's from, but he totally sounds like Foghorn Leghorn when he talks.
I don't know.
Anyway, then he's got this Southern accent, and he speaks like at a slightly slower pace that just sounds very like Foghorn Leghorny to me. But but he was like, "What is your relationship to? Do you have a personal relationship with the president?" And he was like, "I'm his lawyer."
Yeah,
I used to be his lawyer.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Exactly. He caught himself because, like, that's not
kind of
his job as, I mean, after he'd already said it, that's not his job, supposedly, as the attorney general, to be the president's personal lawyer. So I want to read just a bit from Danny Bensky, one of the survivors who actually testified. This is what she said about the meeting that they had with Todd Blanche. She said, during the hearing, I felt a glimmer of humanity and genuine emotion from Senator Tom Tillis when he demanded that Todd Blanche meet with Epstein survivors after refusing to do so for 9 months. For a moment, it felt like we could put partisan politics aside for a greater purpose. Unfortunately, Todd Blanche treated the meeting as a mere check-the-box exercise intended to secure votes for his confirmation. He danced around his wording, repeatedly interrupted us, and could not commit to anything that would demonstrate good faith or begin to restore trust. He did not adequately account for the release of materials that exposed survivors' identifying information and images, and he offered no credible plan to investigate and pursue accountability beyond Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And so she went on to say that she hopes they vote no. And this is what many of the survivors have said, that they do not think this man, from their perspective and based on how he's handled the files, should become the permanent AG. And Danny Bensky, this woman whose comments I was just reading, when she testified, she talked about the harm that had come to her because of her information being released in those files. I'm just going to play you a short clip of that so people understand how, because you hear these things, but I think it's important to hear it from someone who was actually affected by this.
In December, before the document release, our attorneys submitted 350 victims' names to the Department of Justice as victims' names to be redacted prior to the release. In that first release, I found my name in 2 places. In that next release in January, my name appeared again, but this time the redactions were so far worse. The files displayed not only my name, but my phone number, my former addresses, where I worked, and other identifying information. When my name appeared in the third file release, it became difficult to believe that this was not intentional. Despite my lawyer repeatedly contacting the DOJ, seeking protection, my information continued to be exposed. And it's not just my name, it's the identifying information. These documents contain disturbing yet incomplete accounts of my abuse. They were available not only for the entire world to see, but my child, my students, my friends, my employers, my colleagues, and my family. It was humiliating. Worse, my FBI 302 exposed a Jane Doe who had fought for decades to conceal her identity. It's been absolutely devastating. Outing survivors causes real and irrevocable harm. While coping with our emotional distress and psychological trauma, we also have lost our privacy and confidentiality.
So he sat there, listened to her and other survivors, and obviously has been involved with the files for all this time. And then even so, still gave them a cursory meeting to, as she said, check the box, even though, again, he and what his office did was responsible for so much additional harm to these women who had already suffered immense abuse at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein and his colleagues, who Blanche refuses to go after in any way. So there are lots of other things this man has done wrong. And if people don't follow Liz Hoyer, I would recommend that you he was a pardon attorney for the United States until this administration. And when she was asked to do something unlawful, she left instead. And so she's talked a lot about Todd Blanche specifically, and also just in general, all the things that are going on in the Department of Justice that are terrible, terrible. So I'll put a link to her socials in our show notes.
Well, the other thing that I noticed, and thank you for sharing that clip. I had not heard that clip directly. In addition to all this nonsense around the Epstein survivors, and we're not even going to get into the slush fund and all of that stuff. Katie Britt from, I believe, Alabama, couldn't wait for an opportunity to be able to ask him about what was he going to do about mifepristone and what was he going to do to make sure that people had less access to reproductive care. And, Todd Blanche just could not wait to respond by really, harping on how this is the most pro-life president that, we've ever had. The most pro-life president. Can't wait to take away people's reproductive rights.
Did he do the accordion hands while he said it?
Todd Blanche, I do not believe, did that.
He didn't really go for it. Anyway.
He could have really gone for it, but he really held back in that moment from impersonating the president, but rather really just wanted to be his backup guy, Really a great wingman. Todd Blanche is the president's wingman. He's supposed to be auditioning to be an attorney general, and apparently he thinks that will just be an extension of being the president's personal attorney.
Yeah, what could go wrong for the entire country?
A bazillion things, folks. A bazillion things. Anyway, he's terrible. We need to not have him be the attorney general, but I am remain doubtful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
He'll be kept out.
I don't know if people have done a tally, to see where folks stand on his confirmation. But I do want to just be clear that he explicitly stated that he would do what he could to make sure that we don't have access to mifepristone.
Mm-hmm.
And that alone should be disqualifying. It's not his place to be making decisions about anyone's health care. Anyway, so yeah, we'll see. I mean, I would love for him to not be confirmed, but I am not really hopeful that that's what's going to happen. But, I'd love to be happily surprised that maybe the right thing can be done once in a while.
Ooh, well, should we talk about Pete Hegseth?
Okay, yes, let's talk about Pete Hegseth briefly. So Pete Hegseth went in front of Congress this week to talk about an update on the Iran war situation. He basically is requesting more money. They've spent already about $38 billion with the B dollars on the war, according to them. And he was requesting almost $70 billion more. And I think the best part of the hearing, not that I watched the whole thing, but of the clips that I saw, what I really appreciated was John Ossoff's questioning, because, folks are aware, way back in April, the administration was saying that Iran's military was destroyed. And so why are we, one, still fighting with a military that by your own account doesn't exist anymore? Yeah. And two, why do we need even more money to fight a military that doesn't exist? So here is the clip here.
5 months ago, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. That was on day 14 of the war. Was that an accurate statement?
They didn't have a Navy any longer. It was completely sunk. Their missiles were buried underneath a lot of their underground facilities, and their defense industrial base has been almost completely destroyed. So as far as a military assessment of Iran's capabilities, it didn't mean by any stretch of the imagination absolute zero, but they're
Mr. Secretary,
the lowest level.
You stated that on day 14 of this conflict, in the second week of the conflict, you stated that Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Was that an accurate statement? Yes or no?
Iran's ability to challenge the United States of America at the level at which we're capable of.
That's not what I asked you, Mr. Secretary. You said on day 14, Iran's military had been, quote, destroyed and, quote, made combat ineffective. Yes or no? Was that an accurate statement?
What the American military has done to the Iranian military is a historic military defeat,
Will you answer the
and
question?
they're ineffective in that context.
5 months.
He did not, in fact, answer the question under oath or otherwise. I mean, I think he was stuck there, right? And Ossoff caught him because he couldn't really answer the question. If he said, yes, he was telling the truth then why is he asking for money now? And if he said no, then like, why are you lying to the American people and to Congress? So he just like said whatever he wanted to say. I will say there were a few times throughout that hearing where John Ossoff is like really trying to pin him down. And he says, Mr. Secretary. And I swear to you, it sounds just like Mr. Anderson from The Matrix. You know, when that guy says, Mr. Anderson, it sounds exactly the same. Just, I hope folks will listen to it. Tell me if I'm.
I hope someone makes a mashup.
Yeah. So it's so good. Anyway, as a side note, John Ossoff has earned a lot of fans for his recent questioning of folks in these Senate hearings. And a lot of people, I mean, yeah, a lot of people are continuing to call him Senator Boo, Senator Bay. But also, I think he's gaining support actually as a potential 2028 candidate, although he's not like said that he's trying to do that. He's got his own reelection coming up. Anyway, so bottom line was, you know, not only was Hegseth asking for more money for this war, but he's also asking for more money for his overall budget, which was $1 trillion this past year. He's asking for $1.5 trillion, a 50% increase.
But all I want is healthcare.
Yeah. In the meantime, as we discussed,
so much cheaper.
A lot of people, over 1 million people, have already lost access to healthcare because of the big, stupid bill. And then also, as we've talked about before, about 1.5 million children have lost access to healthy food. So we can't afford to feed children here. We can't afford healthcare. We can't afford parental leave. We can't afford affordable childcare. We can't afford anything to actually support the people who live here, but we must make available billions and billions of dollars to bomb children in foreign countries. And that is what our government is doing. That is actually what is happening. That is the United States. That is what freedom looks like here. So that's kind of my update. I mean, there's lots of other stuff there, like people have already heard that he's asking for testosterone testing for people in the military, an absurd policy that also is gender affirming care, which he's already outlawed for folks in the military. So hard to reconcile that. But
well, and like, you know, there's this is all while they're fighting having gender affirming care available for trans people. We have major back shortages of estrogen supplementation, HRT, for women experiencing menopause symptoms. And yet, you know, this ridiculous play to like, they want to test every active duty military person over 30. I mean, there was actually a really good video I saw online. I don't think I saved it, but I can look for it, of a physician who's an endocrinologist who was active duty in the military, who like presents all the reasons why this is like a really terrible idea. It's bad.
Yeah.
I used to work.
Terrible.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, there certainly are, you know, reasons why somebody may benefit from testosterone therapy, but it is certainly not so that they can be a better fighter. Like, well, that's not the indication.
No. And, you know, Jesse Waters over on Fox News, which we know always tells the truth, was making some really disgusting jokes about how women in the military and women in places where the military is deployed better watch out because these guys are going to be so amped up on testosterone. He's making rape jokes. He still remains employed by Fox News. Anyway, should we talk about something else?
Sorry, I just had to process that extra tidbit for just a moment. I thought I would give a little update on the measles. You know, I'm not a fan of the measles, but we got a lot of it here in America these days. So this year, in 2026, it's only July, and we've already had 2,260 cases of measles reported through the CDC. By the time we have the next reporting cycle, it will likely be that number will surpass our entire calendar year of measles last year in 2025. So the entire year in 2025, we had 2,289 cases in the United States. As folks probably remember, this all started from a measles outbreak in Gaines, Texas, which has unfortunately gone off the rails. We've also got sources from other countries that have also, it's going all over the place. We sent it to Chihuahua, Mexico. The measles travels very fast. And so unfortunately, lots of these cases are, of course, kids under 5. There's lots of people the vast majority are either unvaccinated or unknown vaccination, and that's 93% both last year and this year. In California, there was 25 cases last year in 2025, and we already have 52 cases this year, doubling, and it's only July. And 15 of those cases were kids under 5. So, this is a entirely preventable disease. We used to not have hardly any measles at all. We would go years without having more than maybe a few cases entirely. And we are well towards our way of giving up our measles elimination status.
Yes. And this year will be the most number of cases we will have had of measles since 1991.
We're number one. We're number one.
Hashtag progress, hashtag winning.
Yeah. So also on the infectious disease, we're talking about a lot of diseases, a lot of infectious things. Unfortunately, in Congo, the terrible, terrible Ebola outbreak has now caused the death of over 1,000 people. There really are inadequate supplies, inadequate PPE. They don't have a vaccine right now that works effectively against this strain of Ebola, although there is some suggestion that current vaccines that are available may help provide some protection, but it's just absolutely terrible.
Yeah. And this is, I can't remember if we've talked about it on here before, but part of the reason this outbreak has gotten so large and was able to spread so quickly was the withdrawal of USAID and resources from the United States that happened last year with, Doge. Because there would have been people who would have helped with contact tracing and all of this at the very beginning that were not there anymore. And, it's interesting, just a minor thing. I saw today that Elon Musk is trying to kind of like walk back his responsibility, of course, for all of that. And basically said something like he may have gotten a little carried away. Carried away. Is that what we call it when you made decisions that have already killed close to 1 million people? Carried away. Okay. I just wish any of these people would have to be accountable for the decisions and the policies that they're making.
Well, when you're a raging eugenicist, what's a few million people amongst friends,
Especially if they're not white people, did they even count? I'm sure that's how he thinks about it. He was also asked by some journalists, if he's racist. I don't know why you would ask that question, but he said no, he just is against crime. But of course, he's only against crime when it's committed by someone who has a different skin tone. Anyway,
I would just love to never have to have the taste of his name on my lips ever again.
That would be glorious. It really would.
Listen, we did it. Okay. We've talked about so many highlights that have been happening, callbacks to a bunch of our episodes. I feel like we need to provide a little bit of joy. We need to have a different taste in the mouth when we finish the episode. Let's take 2 and call me in the morning.
Okay, perfect. So there's this guy on the interwebs who goes to shelters and he picks up a dog and he takes them out for the day. And he has this little backpack that says like adopt me or something on it. And he carries the dog in this backpack. It's the cutest thing ever. So there's all these, and he takes video of himself. And so it's like him and there's a little dog right here, a little dog face right next to his head, like hanging over his shoulder. And they go everywhere and he takes them to the park. He takes them to get a pup cup. He takes them on the subway. They just have like the best day, and it's all advertising for that dog to hopefully get adopted. And then he like posts these videos. They're very, very cute. And then of course in the videos they say like how you can find this dog if you want to adopt them.
So it's a different dog each time.
It's a different dog each time. He just goes to a shelter, finds a dog who needs like a little extra support in getting adopted and takes them out. And they're like the cutest, the sweetest. He's always like hugging them. They're all so cuddly. And it's like, how are these dogs not getting adopted? They're incredible. Anyway, I love that he does this to try to bring attention to these dogs and to try to help them get adopted. And also the videos are just very, very cute. So I'll put one of them in the show notes so people can go find The username is Mad Max Fluffy Road, which is also genius. Anyway, what's
genius.
What's your thing that you recommend? What do you say folks should take to
Listen, I'm going to put in a plug for any of you. If you own any patch of land, any dirt that is at your disposal, I vote that next summer, try this out, grow sunflowers. Okay. So our kids really wanted to grow sunflowers a few years ago, and they had picked the seeds that were like these, they're literally called gigante. They're like huge. And the kids had gotten a mix. So we grew a bunch of different ones. And then we saved one of the big pods of seeds. And then this year I was like, oh, we've got these in the garage. We should like grow them. And my husband really did it. He set up this huge row in our front yard of sunflowers. Wow. And every day I would come home from work over the past couple of months, and like they would be getting taller and taller and taller and taller. And then they were taller than me. Wow. And then they eventually got these, like, they look like they're going to be these tiny little flowers. And then they end up becoming these literally bigger than my head.
Wow.
Sunflowers. And then we have some that are also from some different varieties that are a little smaller. But last night when it's been pretty hot here, so I waited for sunset, and I went outside, and I needed to cut down all the ones that were like, they're done. They're ready to be harvested. And so I will post some pictures on my Instagram, and I will put a link to them in the show notes. But they're gorgeous. And there's this like little bit of, I'm not into ASMR, but the big sunflowers, if you've never seen a sunflower and you don't know how the seeds are positioned, like the pointy part is actually on the inside, and the bigger part sits on the outside, and that's where there's a little flower. And so now that they're drying, you can kind of like just put your thumb across those tiny little blossoms that are starting to dry, and they just like, I don't know, it's like when you like put your hand across the nap of like a carpet or something, and like suddenly it all swims the other way, or like those things with sequins where you draw your hand across it and the sequin changes color. It kind of is like that. And I was like, I just had such a lovely time last night cutting down these heads, and I had to cut down the big stalks and everything. But I was like, this is great. I was like, should do this again next year. So my vote is gardening.
Okay. I think that's amazing. Sounds very stress releasing and meditative, and probably some energy that we all need a little bit more of, or at least I do. Well, I think that's it. That's it for this week's episode. If you didn't like what you heard, this has been the Men Going Their Own Way podcast. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to The Present Illness, leave us a review, and tell your friends. I do wish some men at least would actually go their own way, but that's a topic for another day.
We know that you don't listen to terrible podcasts out of the manosphere. We know that if you've made it this far, you like people like us. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at The Present Illness, and you can stay on top of all of our TPI-related news.
We will be back next week, although next week's episode is a special episode that we're bringing to you. It's an interview with an author, and so we won't really have the headlines, hot takes, and doom scrolling so much next week, but we'll be back the week after that.
All right. Until then, agitate, hydrate, take a nap, and we'll see you next time on The Present Illness. Production by Arghavan, Salles, and Alyssa Burgart. Editing by Alyssa Burgart. Social media by Arghavan, Salles. Original music by Joseph Uphoff. Don't take medical advice from random people on a podcast. This show's for informational purposes. It's meant to be fun, certainly not medical advice. Please take your medical questions to a qualified professional. And it's our hobby. This podcast doesn't represent the opinions of our employers or anyone but ourselves.